The girl sat in the dirt outside Caleb Merrick's barn, her bare feet caked in dust and blood, clutching a single worn shoe to her chest like it might breathe if she held it tight enough. She couldn't have been more than 7. Caleb had been mucking stalls when he heard the sound, a soft, broken whimper that didn't belong to any animal he owned. He set down the pitchfork and stepped into the late afternoon light, squinting against the glare. That's when he saw her. Small, trembling, her dress torn at the shoulder, her hair matted with something dark he hoped was only mud. "Hey," he said quietly, crouching a few feet away so he wouldn't spook her. "You hurt?" She didn't answer, just stared at the shoe in her lap, her fingers tracing the frayed laces over and over, like a prayer she'd forgotten the words to. Caleb glanced around. His ranch sat 3 miles outside of Dust Hollow, Arizona territory, bordered by scrub brush and canyon ridges that stretched for miles. No houses, no roads, just wind and stone and silence. "Where'd you come from?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He waited, the sun pressed down heavy, turning the air thick and still. A crow called from somewhere beyond the fence line, its voice sharp and wrong in the quiet. Then finally, she whispered, "I found Mama's shoes." Caleb's chest tightened. "Where's your mama now?" The girl's face crumpled. Tears streaked through the dust on her cheeks, carving pale lines down to her jaw. "I don't know," she sobbed. "I found Mama's shoes, but not Mama." She held up the shoe again, shaking it like proof, like evidence of something stolen. Caleb felt something cold settle in his gut. He'd seen enough in his 43 years to know when a situation had teeth. This one did. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Rosie." "Rosie, I'm Caleb. You're safe here. Nobody's gonna hurt you." She looked at him then, her eyes wide and wet and far too old for a child. "They took her," she whispered. "Who took her?" "The men, the bad men with the wagons." Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories, rumors that drifted through town like smoke, women going missing near the canyon trails, families torn apart in the night, bodies never found. Most folks said it was Apache. Others said drifters. A few said it was something worse. He stood slowly, scanning the horizon. The canyon was 5 miles east, a jagged scar in the earth where the land dropped away into shadow and stone. It was a place most people avoided. Too many ways to get lost, too many places to disappear. "Rosie," he said carefully, "how long ago did this happen?" She shook her head, her breath hitching. "I don't know, it was morning. Mama said we'd reach town by supper, then the wagon stopped, and the men came." "Where's your pa?" Her face went blank. "Dead," she said flatly, "2 winters ago, fever." Caleb crouched again, meeting her eyes. "You walked here alone?" She nodded. "From where?" She pointed east, toward the canyon. Caleb felt his pulse quicken. That was rough country. Sharp rocks, rattlesnakes, drop-offs that could kill a man if he wasn't careful. For a child to cross it alone, barefoot and terrified, she was either lucky or something had pushed her hard enough that she didn't stop to think. "Did anyone follow you?" "I don't think so." Her voice was small, uncertain. Caleb stood and walked to the edge of the yard, his boots crunching on the dry earth. He looked east, toward the canyon, and felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like an old coat he thought he'd burned years ago. He hadn't been to the canyon in 8 years. Not since the night he'd ridden out with Sheriff Voss and 3 other men to track a band of outlaws who'd raided a supply wagon near the ridge. They'd found the wagon, found the bodies, but the outlaws had vanished like ghosts, swallowed by the canyon's maze of ravines and shadows. And Caleb had seen something else that night, something he'd tried to forget. A woman's scarf tied to a Joshua tree, fluttering in the wind. A child's doll lying face-down in the sand. Boot prints leading deeper into the canyon where no sane man would follow. Voss had called off the search, said it was too dangerous, said they'd done all they could. Caleb had wanted to argue, but he hadn't. He'd turned his horse around and ridden home, and he'd never spoken of it again. Now, standing in his yard with a sobbing child clutching her dead mother's shoe, he felt the weight of that silence like a stone in his throat. "Rosie," he said quietly, turning back to her, "I'm gonna get you some water, then you're gonna tell me everything you remember, every detail. Can you do that?" She nodded, her small fingers tightening around the shoe. Caleb walked to the well, drew a bucket of cold water, and filled a tin cup. He brought it to her, and she drank in quick, desperate gulps, water spilling down her chin. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked up at him. "Mr. Caleb, why are you gonna find my mammoth?" He looked at her, this small, broken thing who'd walked through hell barefoot and alone, and felt something crack open inside him, something he thought he'd buried a long time ago. "Yeah," he said, "I'm gonna find her." Her lip trembled. "Promise." Caleb crouched down one more time, his voice low and steady. "I promise." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. In the distance, the canyon waited, silent and patient, like it had been waiting all along. Caleb set Rosie up in the spare room off the kitchen, a small space with a cot, a wool blanket, and a window that looked out over the hills. She sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the shoe, her eyes distant. He brought her bread and jerky, but she only picked at it. "Rosie," he said, sitting in the chair by the door, "I need you to tell me what happened. Start from the beginning." She was quiet for a long moment, then slowly she spoke. "Mama and me left Silver Ridge 3 days ago. We were going to Dust Hollow. Mama said there was work there, sewing work." "Just the two of you?" She nodded. "We had a wagon, an old one. Mama bought it from a man in town. It wasn't much, but it was ours." "What happened on the trail?" Her hands trembled. "We were halfway through the canyon road. The sun was high, Mama was singing, then the wagon stopped." "Why?" "There was a tree across the road, a big one. Mama said it looked like it fell, but," she trailed off, her voice tightening, "but it didn't look fallen, it looked cut." Caleb's jaw clenched. "A trap." "What happened next?" "Men came out of the rocks, 3 of them, maybe 4, I don't remember. They had bandanas over their faces. One of them grabbed Mama, she screamed, she told me to run." Tears spilled down Rosie's cheeks again, but she kept talking, her voice shaking. "I hid in the brush. I watched them tie her hands. She was crying, she was calling my name, but I didn't come out, I didn't." Her voice broke. Caleb leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "You did the right thing, Rosie. Your mama wanted you safe. That's why she told you to run." "But I didn't help her." "You survived. That's what she wanted." Rosie looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. "They threw her in the back of a wagon, a different wagon, then they left. I waited until it was quiet, then I looked for her. I found her shoes on the ground, both of them, but not her." She held up the single shoe again, and Caleb's stomach turned. "I carried one," she whispered. "I walked and walked. I thought maybe I'd find the wagon, but I just found your ranch." Caleb exhaled slowly, his mind racing. This wasn't random. This was organized, planned, the kind of operation that had roots. "Rosie," he said carefully, "did your mama ever mention anyone? Someone who might have been watching her, following her?" She shook her head. "No, she didn't talk much about Silver Ridge. She just said we had to leave." "Why?" Rosie's face clouded. "I don't know, she wouldn't tell me, but she seemed scared." Caleb stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkening horizon. His mind pulled at threads he didn't want to follow. Silver Ridge. The name stirred something in him, a memory he'd buried deep. 8 years ago, when he and Voss had tracked those outlaws into the canyon, they'd heard rumors, whispers about a man named Garrett Lyle who ran a network of smugglers and slavers through the territory. Lyle operated out of Silver Ridge, protected by corrupt officials and hired guns. He moved people like cargo, women and children, mostly sold them to work camps, brothels, and worse. Caleb had wanted to go after him, but Voss had shut it down. Too big, Voss had said, too dangerous, we are lawmen, not martyrs. So Caleb had let it go. He'd gone back to his ranch, to his quiet life, and tried to forget. But now, standing in his kitchen with a terrified child who'd walked through hell to find him, he felt the weight of that silence crushing him. He turned back to Rosie. What was your mama's name? Anna Hale. The name hit him like a fist. Caleb's breath caught, his vision blurred for a second, and he gripped the windowsill to steady himself. Anna Hale. He knew that name. 8 years ago, when he and Voss had ridden into Silver Ridge asking questions about Garrett Lyle, a woman had approached him in the street. She'd been young, maybe 20, with a baby in her arms. She'd begged him to help her. Please, she'd whispered. My husband, he's one of Lyle's men. He's gonna sell me, please. Caleb had wanted to help. He'd wanted to do something, but Voss had grabbed his arm and pulled him away. We're not here for that, Voss had hissed. Focus on the job. So Caleb had ridden out. He'd left her standing in the street, clutching her baby, her eyes filled with desperate hope that he'd crushed by turning his back. He'd told himself it wasn't his problem. He'd told himself he couldn't save everyone. But now, staring at Rosie, this small girl with her mother's eyes and her mother's fear, he realized the truth. That baby had been Rosie, and the woman he'd abandoned was Anna. His legs felt weak. He sank into the chair, his hands shaking. Mr. Caleb, Rosie's voice was small. Are you okay? He looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt the full weight of his cowardice. Yeah, he lied, I'm okay. But he wasn't. He'd let Anna Hale down once. He'd walked away when she needed him most. And now she was gone, taken by the same men he'd been too afraid to fight. Rosie watched him with wide, trusting eyes, and Caleb felt something break open inside him. Not hope, but resolve. Rosie, he said quietly, his voice steady now, I'm gonna find your mama, and I'm gonna bring her home. She nodded, her fingers still wrapped around the shoe. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of dust and stone. The canyon waited. And this time, Caleb wasn't going to turn away. Caleb spent the night preparing. He loaded his rifle, checked his saddlebags, and filled his canteen. He didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Anna Hale's face, young and desperate, pleading for help he'd never given. By dawn, he was ready. He walked into the kitchen, where Rosie sat at the table, still clutching the shoe. She looked up at him, her face pale. You're going now? Yeah. Can I come? No. Her face crumpled. Please, I can show you where. No, Rosie, his voice was firm but not unkind. You're staying here, I'll bring your mama back, but I need you safe. She looked down at the shoe, her fingers trembling. What if you don't come back? Caleb crouched in front of her, his hands resting on his knees. I'm coming back. She met his eyes, searching for something, truth, maybe, or certainty. Whatever she found, it was enough, she nodded. Okay. Caleb stood, grabbed his rifle, and headed for the door. Then he stopped. There was a sound outside, faint at first, but growing louder. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses, coming fast. Caleb's hand moved to his gun belt. He glanced at Rosie. Stay inside, don't come out unless I tell you. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear. Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, and waited. A moment later, 5 riders crested the ridge. They moved in a tight formation, dust rising in their wake. As they drew closer, Caleb recognized the man in front. Sheriff Abel Voss. Voss was in his 50s now, his hair gray, his face lined with years of compromise and whiskey. He wore a tin star on his chest and a revolver on his hip, but Caleb knew the truth. Voss hadn't been a real lawman in years. He was a puppet, a man who looked the other way when it suited him. The riders stopped 20 feet from the porch. Voss leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes cold. Caleb. Voss. Heard you got a visitor. Caleb didn't move. That's my business. Not when it concerns Garrett Lyle. The name hung in the air like smoke. Caleb's jaw tightened. What do you want, Voss? I want the girls. No. Voss's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. Caleb, don't make this harder than it needs to be. That girl's mama is Lyle's property, which means the girl is too. Property, Caleb's voice was flat. You hear yourself. It's the law. It's not the law, it's cowardice. One of the riders, a lean man with a scar across his cheek, spat into the dirt. You got a mouth on you, rancher. Caleb ignored him, keeping his eyes on Voss. Lyle's been running his operation for years. You've let him. You've looked the other way while he takes women and children, and you call it law. Voss's face hardened. I call it survival. Lyle's got money. He's got men. You think one rancher with a conscience is gonna change that? Maybe not, but I'm not giving you the girl. Voss sighed, like he was dealing with a stubborn child. Caleb, you always were a fool. You think this ends well for you. You think you can stand against Lyle and walk away. I'm not walking away this time. Voss stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. All right. He turned to the man with the scar. Torch the barn. Caleb's blood went cold. Voss. You got two choices, Caleb. Give me the girl or watch everything you built burn. The scarred man dismounted, pulling a torch from his saddlebag. He struck a match, and the flame caught, flickering in the morning light. Caleb raised his rifle. Take one step toward that barn, and I'll drop you. The man paused, glancing at Voss. Voss smiled, a thin, humorless thing. You gonna shoot all 5 of us, Caleb? Caleb didn't answer. His finger rested on the trigger, his pulse steady. For a moment, no one moved. Then, from behind him, a small voice called out. Mr. Caleb. Rosie stood in the doorway, the shoe still clutched in her hands. Voss's smile widened. There she is. Caleb stepped in front of her, blocking Voss's view. Get back inside, Rosie. But no. She hesitated, then turned and disappeared into the house. Voss leaned back in his saddle, his tone almost bored. This doesn't have to be ugly, Caleb. Just hand her over, go back to your quiet life. Forget this ever happened. Like I forgot 8 years ago. Voss's smile faltered. What? You remember Silver Ridge, that woman who begged us for help, the one you told me to ignore. Voss's face went still. That was Anna Hale, Caleb continued, his voice hard. The girl's mama, I walked away from her once. I'm not doing it again. Voss stared at him, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he nodded to the scarred man. Burn it. The man stepped forward, torch raised. Caleb pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the morning air, and the torch flew from the man's hand, landing in the dirt. The man stumbled back, clutching his wrist, blood streaming between his fingers. The other riders went for their guns. Caleb chambered another round, swinging the rifle toward them. Next one's between the eyes. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then, from the ridge behind Voss, another voice called out. That's enough. Caleb's heart skipped. A group of riders appeared on the horizon, 6 men, moving slow and steady. Caleb recognized them, ranch hands from neighboring spreads, men he'd worked with over the years, men who didn't owe him anything but came anyway. Voss turned in his saddle, his face darkening. The lead rider, a grizzled man named Tom Barlow, reined his horse beside Caleb's fence. Caleb, Tom said, heard you might need a hand. Caleb didn't lower his rifle. Appreciate it, Tom. Tom looked at Voss, his expression hard. Abel, you've let Lyle run this territory long enough. Time someone stood up. Voss's jaw tightened. This isn't your fight, Tom. It is now. The other riders spread out, forming a line. None of them drew weapons. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. Voss stared at them for a long moment. Then he spat into the dirt. This isn't over. He turned his horse and rode off, his men following. The scarred man, still clutching his bleeding wrist, stumbled after them. When they were gone, Caleb finally lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking. Tom dismounted and walked over, clapping him on the shoulder. You all right? Caleb nodded, his throat tight. Yeah, thanks. Don't thank me yet. Lyle's gonna hear about this, and when he does, he's coming. Caleb looked east, toward the canyon. Then I better move fast. Caleb rode out an hour later, leaving Rosie in Tom Barlow's care. Tom promised to keep her safe, and Caleb believed him. Tom was the kind of man who kept his word. The trail into the canyon was narrow and treacherous, winding through jagged rock and scrub brush. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thick and heavy. Sweat dripped down Caleb's back, soaking through his shirt. He followed Rosie's directions as best he could, looking for landmarks she described: a lightning-split tree, a boulder shaped like a crouching dog, a dry creek bed where the wagon had stopped. It took 3 hours to find it. The wagon sat overturned in a ravine, its wheels shattered, supplies scattered across the ground. Caleb dismounted and walked slowly through the wreckage, his rifle ready. He found Anna's other shoe near the creek bed, half buried in sand. His chest tightened. He knelt, brushing the dirt away, and picked it up. It was small, worn, the kind of shoe a woman wore when she couldn't afford anything better. He stood scanning the area. Boot prints led east, deeper into the canyon, multiple sets, at least 4 men, maybe more. Caleb followed. The trail wound through narrow passages and steep inclines, places where a horse couldn't go. He dismounted and continued on foot, leading his horse by the reins. The sun was beginning to dip when he heard it. A voice, faint, weak, but unmistakably human. He moved faster, his pulse quickening. The trail opened into a small clearing surrounded by rock walls. In the center, tied to a Joshua tree, was a woman. Anna. She was alive. Her head hung forward, her wrists bound with rope, her dress torn and stained with blood, but her chest rose and fell. Caleb rushed forward, dropping to his knees in front of her. Anna. She didn't respond. He pulled his knife from his belt and cut the ropes. She collapsed forward, and he caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. Anna, can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered open, just barely. She stared at him, confused, disoriented. Who? My name's Caleb Merrick. Your daughter sent me. At the mention of Rosie, something flickered in Anna's eyes. Rosie, she whispered, is she? She's safe, she's with friends, she's waiting for you. Anna's breath hitched, and tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought they'd find her, I thought. They didn't, she's safe. Anna sobbed, her body shaking with relief and exhaustion. Caleb pulled his canteen from his belt and held it to her lips. She drank greedily, water spilling down her chin. When she finished, she looked at him again, her eyes clearer now. Why, she whispered, why did you come for me? Caleb hesitated. He could lie, he could tell her it was the right thing to do, that any decent man would have done the same. But he didn't. Because I didn't come for you 8 years ago. Anna's brow furrowed. What? Silver Ridge, Caleb said quietly. You asked me for help. You were holding a baby. You said your husband worked for Garrett Lyle. You begged me to help you. Anna's eyes widened, recognition dawning slowly. That was you. Caleb nodded. I walked away. I told myself it wasn't my fight, and I've regretted it every day since. Anna stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, she spoke. You left me there. Yeah. You left me with him, with Lyle's men, for 8 years. Yeah. Her voice was quiet, steady, but there was something raw beneath it. Do you know what those 8 years were like? Caleb didn't answer. Do you know what it's like to be owned, to have your body sold, to watch your daughter grow up knowing that at any moment someone could take her too? Her voice broke, but she kept going. I waited, I saved every coin I could, I ran the moment I had enough, and you think coming for me now makes up for it. Caleb met her eyes, his voice low. No, it doesn't. Anna's jaw tightened. Then why are you here? Because I was wrong, and because your daughter walked through hell to find me, and because this time I'm not walking away. Anna stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. All right. Caleb exhaled. He helped her to her feet, and she winced, her legs weak. Can you walk? I'll manage. He supported her weight as they moved slowly back through the canyon, retracing his steps. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the rocks. They didn't speak much, but as they walked, Anna said something quietly, almost to herself. Rosie, she's smart, brave, stronger than I ever was. She gets that from you, Caleb said. Anna glanced at him, something softer in her eyes now. Maybe. So let me ask you, if you were in Caleb's boots 8 years ago, would you have ridden away? Or would you have stayed and fought, even knowing it might cost you everything? Think about that while I tell you what happened next. They reached Caleb's ranch just after nightfall. Tom Barlow was waiting on the porch, rifle in hand. When he saw them, he lowered it and called inside. Rosie, she's here. The door flew open, and Rosie ran out, barefoot and wild-eyed. Mama! Anna dropped to her knees, and Rosie crashed into her, sobbing. They held each other in the dirt, neither one letting go, and Caleb turned away, giving them the moment they'd earned. Tom walked over, his voice low. Voss came back, said Lyle's sending men in the morning. Caleb nodded. Then we'll be ready. Dawn broke cold and pale over the ranch. Caleb stood on the porch, rifle in hand, watching the horizon. Beside him, Tom Barlow and 5 other men waited, armed and silent. They'd come without being asked. Ranch hands and farmers who'd lived under Garrett Lyle's shadow for too long. Inside the house, Anna sat with Rosie, their hands intertwined. The sound came just after sunrise. Hoofbeats, a dozen riders, maybe more, moving fast and loud. At the head of the group rode a tall man in a black coat, Garrett Lyle himself. Beside him was Sheriff Voss, his face grim. They stopped 50 yards from the house. Lyle dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate. He was older than Caleb expected, maybe 60, but there was nothing frail about him. His eyes were cold and calculating, the eyes of a man who'd built an empire on suffering. Caleb Merrick, Lyle called out, his voice smooth. I've heard a lot about you. Caleb didn't respond. Lyle smiled. I'm here for what's mine, the woman, the girl. Hand them over and we'll forget this ever happened. They're not yours, Caleb said. See, that's where you're wrong, Lyle gestured to Voss. Sheriff, explain to Mr. Merrick how the law works. Voss cleared his throat, his voice flat. Anna Hale was indentured to Garrett Lyle under a legal contract signed by her late husband. That contract extends to her dependents. By law, they belong to him. That's not law, Tom Barlow said, stepping forward. That's slavery dressed up in paperwork. Lyle's smile didn't waver. Call it what you want, but the law's on my side. Then the law's wrong, Caleb said. Lyle's expression hardened. You really want to die for a woman you don't even know? I know enough. Lyle sighed, as if disappointed. All right then. He nodded to his men. They started forward. Caleb raised his rifle. And then, from the ridge behind Lyle, a voice called out. "Hold it!" Lyle turned. A line of riders appeared on the horizon, 20 men, maybe more, ranchers, shopkeepers, farmers, people from Dust Hollow and the surrounding homesteads. They moved slow. Why deliberately, forming a wall? At the front road, an older man Caleb recognized, Dutch Carver, who owned the feed store in town. "Lyle," Dutch said, his voice steady, "we are done with you." Lyle's face darkened. "This isn't your concern, Dutch. It is now. We've let you run this territory long enough. Time it stopped." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Lyle looked around, his jaw tightening. His men shifted nervously, outnumbered and surrounded. Voss leaned over, his voice low. "Garrett, this isn't worth it." Lyle's eyes flicked to Caleb, then to the house, where Anna and Rosie watched from the window. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then Lyle turned his horse. "This isn't over," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. He rode off, his men following. Voss lingered for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he, too, turned and left. The crowd didn't move until they were gone. Then slowly, they began to disperse. Dutch rode up to the porch, tipping his hat. "Caleb." "Dutch, thank you." "Don't thank me, just make sure it sticks." Caleb nodded. As the riders left, Anna stepped onto the porch, Rosie at her side. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. Caleb looked at her. "For now." Anna nodded, her hand resting on Rosie's shoulder. "What happens now?" "You stay here as long as you need." "Why?" Caleb met her eyes. "Because 8 years ago, I didn't stand up when I should have. I'm not making that mistake again." Anna studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "All right." Rosie tugged on her mother's dress. "Mama, can we stay?" Anna looked down at her daughter, tears welling in her eyes. "Yeah, baby, we can stay." In the weeks that followed, Anna and Rosie settled into the ranch. Anna mended clothes and cooked meals. Rosie helped with the chickens and played in the yard, her laughter slowly returning. Caleb built 2 small crosses near the fence line, marking the place where Anna's old life had ended and her new one began. He carved their names into the wood, names of the women Lyle had taken, names that deserved to be remembered. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Anna joined him by the fence. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." They stood in silence for a while, watching the horizon. "Caleb," Anna said finally, "do you think it'll last, the peace?" "I don't know, but I'll fight for it if I have to." Anna nodded. "Then so will I." Rosie ran up behind them, laughing, chasing a butterfly through the tall grass. She was barefoot, but this time it didn't matter. She was home. Caleb watched her, and for the first time in 8 years, the weight on his chest lifted. He'd made a promise, and he'd kept it. The canyon still loomed in the distance, dark and silent, but it no longer held power over him. He'd walked into its shadow and come back with something he thought he'd lost forever. Not redemption, but a chance. And that was enough. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, and the 3 of them stood together in the fading light, a rancher, a woman, and a child, no longer alone, no longer lost. Just free.